For class this week, we are going to be concentrating on blindness and low vision. Here are the learning objectives for the lecture. So for the legal definition, unlike other disabilities covered by IDEA, visual impairment has both legal and educational definitions. The legal definition is based on visual acuity and field of vision. What visual acuity means is the ability to clearly distinguish forms or discriminate among details. So when you look at the legal definition, we have here that a person whose visual acuity is 20/200 in the better eye with the use of a corrective lens is considered blind, and a person whose visual acuity falls between 20/70 and 2200 in the better eye after correction is considered partially sighted for legal purposes. Something to note is that as the bottom number, so in the example 200, as that bottom number increases, visual acuity decreases. For our purposes, we would be looking at the educational definition, which is a disability category under IDEA. And the definitions of visual impairments emphasize the relationship between vision and learning. So within that definition is 3 sub-definitions: totally blind, functionally blind, and low vision. Something to consider is the age of onset. So for congenitally blind, that means that the visual impairment is present at birth. So the child is born with that. They have a background of learning through hearing. So they have a background of learning through hearing, touch, and other non-visual senses. The second category there means that the visual impairment is acquired. So the child is not born with this, and a visual memory of things is retained. So something specific to teachers to remember is that for the second category, those students may need more emotional support because they once knew what it was like to see and then they lost their sight, which you can imagine can be very emotional and traumatic. So I want to ask you, if you were given a question, which is the case for Helen Keller, which one of these categories would you answer? And also, as you think about Habian, who we're reading about, which one would be the case for Habian? When we look at characteristics, we're thinking about cognition and language. So students perform more poorly than sighted children on cognitive tasks requiring comprehension or relating different items of information. So what I want you to think about is, why do you think this is so? When thinking about this, sighted children are constantly learning from experiences and interactions with their environment. So, for example, a sighted child can see you cooking on the stove. So when they reach up and they feel that pot, they're going to learn from that experience that it's hot. And so moving forward, when they see a stove, they're going to associate that with, oh, this could burn me. With a child who is blind and they're just touching different areas, they might not know because they can't see that stove, and they might not associate that with a burn until it happens repeatedly. For characteristics involving motor development and mobility, visual impairment often leads to delays and deficiencies in motor development. There's 4 functions of vision in the acquisition of motor skills, which is motivation. Many children feel fearful and they don't have very much motivation to start moving around. Spatial awareness, protection, and feedback. So when thinking about these functions of vision, I want you to ask yourself, what emotional responses are evoked in children? For characteristics involving social adjustment and interaction, children with visual impairments play and interact less during free time and are often delayed in social skills. Many struggle with social isolation, the inability to see and respond to social signals, and stereotypical behavior. The inability to see and respond to the social signals of others reduces opportunities for interactions that are reciprocal. When we're looking at social adjustment and interaction even more, we see that these students have repetitive body movements such as body rocking, eye pressing and poking, hand flapping, and hand weaving. For the numbers, fewer than 2 children in 1,000 have visual impairments. Only about 1 in 200 to 250 of all school-age children with IEPs are served under the category of visual impairments. Many school-age children with visual impairments also have another disability and are served under other disability categories, specifically deaf blindness or multiple disabilities. Right here we have a statistic from the American Printing House for the Blind, which we visited last week. How do we see? So effective vision requires proper functioning of 3 systems of the eye. So when we're looking at these different systems, the light first hits our cornea and then is going to go through these different stages. That second stage is the liquid that surrounds our eye, and then it's going to go through to our pupil, onto the lens, another layer of liquid, and the retina. When we look at some causes, first we have refractive errors. So refraction is the process of bending light rays when they pass from one transparent structure into another. So here we have some different conditions that hopefully your guide talked about last week when we visited the American Printing House for the Blind. Our educational approaches is something I want to focus on. So Braille is the primary means of literacy for people who are blind. I'm not going to spend much time on these, as you should have gotten a lot of insight into this on our field trip last week. When we look at giving specialized instruction for students with low vision, you're going to learn some more about this in the IRIS module that you complete. But between 75% and 80% of school-age children with visual impairments have some potentially useful vision. I know our guide talked about this and how that it's very important for children who do have vision to be able to use that and access that existing vision. Curriculum development and instruction should be guided by these basic premises that are on this slide. Visual efficiency, functional vision, and visual efficiency teaches the use of remaining vision. So it's very important for students to have awareness on fixing or locating, scanning, tracking, gaze shifting, discriminating, and visual sequencing. There's different type of optical devices that are listed here. Reading print, so within the school system, we can have print enlarged, or we can use assistive technology devices that will enlarge any type of print that we give our students. In the classroom, some things that you can adapt is having proper lighting, desk with adjustable or tilting tops, different types of writing paper, modified worksheets, and chairs with wheels. So if the student is working at their desk and they need to quickly come up to the board to look at something you've put under the document camera, they can do that. Reading print, so strategies for accommodating the slower reading rates of most children with low vision include extra time on test, sufficient time to study and use auditory reading aids, and providing even more extended time for when children are trying to read. The expanded core curriculum, this is not something that you would be doing as a special education teacher, but you would be working hand in hand with other people who are specialized in orientation and mobility training. Involved in this is cane skills, guide dogs, sighted guides, electronic travel aids. Also, something specific to you as a special education teacher would be working on listening skills and functional life skills. When we look at placement options, most children with visual impairments are educated in public schools. Here are breakdowns here. What type of placement is the Kentucky School for Blind? That's something I want you to think about. So of those options there, which one would be Kentucky School for Blind? When you're thinking about supporting the student in the general education classroom, the most important factor to the successful inclusion of students with visual impairments is a skilled and supportive general education teacher. You also need to be able to collaborate with the Braille teacher or the orientation and mobility teacher. Something I want to add to this is having high expectations for these students. I think you can think back to Havian's example and the teacher at the very beginning of the book who did not provide very good expectations for her. So we will end with, what do blind people want from society? So the opportunity to be equal and the right to be different. So they embrace their differentness, and it is very unique, and they bring a lot of positive aspects to our society. Print and Braille are equal but different. The need for independent travel is similar, but skills are learned differently, and concepts and learning require different experiences for blind persons. So with the end of this lecture, now you need to start on the IRIS module. Please make sure you go through that page by page, and you will be answering the questions for the assessment at the end. Remember, you are using the template on Moodle to help guide you through that. So you're going to click on the assignment detail. You will be saving this to your computer, and you will be answering these questions down here. You'll type them into this document, upload them, and this will be your 10 points. So once again, this is due right here. Okay, you'll submit this, and it is due Thursday by midnight.